This chapter examines what students learn in formal educational settings such as schools, colleges, and universities, and how this differs from everyday, informal learning. Until recently, especially in universities, teaching was mainly seen as the transfer of knowledge from teacher to student. In practice, this approach was only partly successful, but when higher education was more elitist, it was easy to place the responsibility for failure on the students. Today, higher education serves a much larger share of the population, and the view of teaching has shifted. The goal is no longer just to deliver content. As Ramsden, 2003, p. 5 states, the aim of teaching is simple. It is to make student learning possible. This perspective places greater responsibility on teachers, who must understand how students learn and how their understanding develops. Formal learning, therefore, involves more than passing on information. To design effective teaching, we need a clear definition of what it is. The following sections examine key influences on how formal education defines itself. Policymakers, workplaces, educational researchers, and teachers. The discussion begins with post-16 education, since it strongly shapes the school curriculum. As Margaret Spellings, 2006, noted, high school curricula should prepare all students for further education and support a smooth transition to college. In most countries, education is a political issue because it is largely organized and funded by the state. Policy documents often set ambitious goals, such as the United Nations target of universal primary education by 2015. By 2011, however, the world was only halfway toward achieving it. National education policies must balance competing demands on the curriculum. As more people enter higher education, school curricula are increasingly shaped by post-16 requirements. Governments therefore try to influence education at all levels to ensure it meets academic, economic, and social needs. In the UK, a major review identified 4 roles for universities: knowledge-oriented, personal, economic, and social. The curriculum was expected to develop individuals' abilities, expand knowledge for its own sake and for society, and support a flexible, knowledge-based economy. The social role also highlights graduates' responsibility as active citizens in a democratic society. Citizenship and human rights education are now part of an emerging global curriculum, promoted by organizations such as the OECD and UNESCO. These ambitions place greater demands on teachers, who must do more than simply transmit subject knowledge. At the same time, policies aim to increase participation in education beyond school, requiring both higher quality and broader access. European and UK policies have also stressed employability. The EU's Lisbon Agenda called for a competitive knowledge economy, and universities were urged to design programs that better match labor market needs. UK policy emphasized basic skills like literacy and numeracy, as well as broader abilities such as teamwork and communication. This approach is reflected in the OECD's PISA assessments, which focus on the knowledge and skills needed for full participation in society, not just mastery of school subjects. EU policy also promotes interdisciplinary teaching and research, since innovation often occurs where different fields meet. As a result, graduates are expected to develop high-level cognitive skills that can be applied across disciplines. The formal curriculum is therefore not only about subject knowledge, but also about the transferable skills required in a knowledge-based society. During the 1990s, the rise of the internet, lifelong learning, and demand for high-level skills reshaped views on education. Universities were expected to support a growing knowledge society by producing graduates who could innovate and adapt to rapid technological change. As higher education expanded, continuing education became more important, increasing the workforce's capacity to respond to change. Workplace demands also influenced universities. With limited research funding, many institutions relied on attracting students, prompting curriculum changes to improve employability or match student interests. Disciplines were sometimes rebranded or reshaped to remain appealing. However, deeper challenges exist. Workplace knowledge differs from academic knowledge. Universities focus on specialized, research-based knowledge, while workplaces value problem-solving in real contexts, adaptability, teamwork, and communication. Efforts like work-based learning aim to bridge this gap, but disciplinary and workplace knowledge are produced differently and do not easily translate. Research shows workplace learning includes task performance, decision-making, teamwork, judgment, and personal development, forms of knowledge that mix skills and understanding. Employers prioritize generic cognitive skills over specialized academic knowledge, except in technical professions. As a result, higher education continues to struggle with balancing specialized knowledge and broader workplace competencies. Schools are also being pushed to integrate 21st-century skills such as critical thinking, collaboration, and technological competence. The formal curriculum has shifted from a focus on disciplinary knowledge to measurable learning outcomes, especially skills linked to employment. In the UK, the Quality Assurance Agency, QAA, introduced subject benchmarking to define standards across disciplines, emphasizing knowledge and transferable skills. Critics such as Ronald Barnett and Gareth Coate argue this curriculum as outcomes model reduces education to skills and neglects being, personal development, critical thinking, and autonomy, which make graduates adaptable and future-proof. Michael Young, from a social realist perspective, stresses that curriculum should support the development of disciplinary knowledge through specialist communities and cognitive interests, not just generic outcomes. Both perspectives warn that overemphasizing employability skills risks weakening disciplinary depth. A balanced curriculum must integrate specific disciplinary knowledge with high-level generic skills, since knowledge and skills are internally connected and mutually reinforcing. In higher education, formal learning is defined through shared quality frameworks. In the UK, the Quality Assurance Agency for Higher Education provides subject benchmarks, and at the European level, the Tuning Project aligns degree outcomes across countries. These processes are collective. Leading academics work together to define what a graduate in a subject like history should be able to do. When we compare frameworks such as QAA and Tuning in history, we see substantial agreement. Both emphasize the ability to interpret evidence, construct arguments, understand contested knowledge, and take different perspectives. Although the wording differs, the core intentions are similar. This suggests that it is possible to define a shared disciplinary core of achievement. Importantly, these frameworks show that formal learning is not simply about acquiring historical facts. It includes developing analytical thinking, perspective-taking, and argumentation skills. The Enhancing Teaching Learning Environments project approached the issue differently. Instead of starting with official benchmarks, researchers interviewed academics about what they actually valued in teaching. They described formal learning as developing ways of thinking and practicing within a discipline. Some felt official learning outcomes were too restrictive. However, when learning outcomes from 6 disciplines were tested across other fields, something interesting happened. While some outcomes were clearly discipline-specific, many were widely considered relevant. For example, developing analytic thinking, applying concepts to real-world problems, communicating arguments clearly using evidence critically, nearly 40% of the outcomes were seen as relevant by more than 75% of teachers across disciplines. This suggests that formal learning goes beyond subject knowledge. It involves high-level cognitive capabilities that transcend disciplines. So while disciplines differ in content, they share common ambitions for how students should think. This chapter clarifies the nature of formal learning as a foundation for better teaching design. There is now a broad consensus across stakeholders. Formal learning is not only about mastering disciplinary knowledge, It also involves developing high-level cognitive skills required in a knowledge society. From the workplace perspective, generic cognitive skills, such as critical thinking and adaptability, are often more important than specific content knowledge. This creates a tension between specialized disciplinary depth and broader transferable skills. Educational theorists argue for balance. Students need both solid disciplinary knowledge and widely applicable cognitive skills. Teachers also recognize that many learning outcomes are shared across disciplines, making cross-disciplinary collaboration possible. Because this book takes a generic view of teaching, the shared elements across disciplines are important. Learning theories and teaching practices can therefore support a common academic effort to improve education. In today's rapidly expanding knowledge environment, education cannot aim to cover all knowledge. Instead, its goal is to equip students with intellectual tools and learning strategies that enable lifelong learning. Ultimately, while expectations of formal education are broad and sometimes competing, it is the relationship between teacher and learner that determines success. The following chapters therefore focus first on the learner's perspective, and then on what effective teaching requires.